I knew nothing about Dark Cloud for the longest time. Growing up on Nintendo and only seeing the cover made me think this was PlayStation's attempt at making a Zelda game. A game with its own silent elf boy protagonist in a green hat. I only later found out I was way off. Now I know what kind of game Dark Cloud really is, and I've wanted to play it ever since. It's not only a dungeon crawling action RPG, but it also has town building mechanics. It's an interesting mix of ideas, especially when you consider it's developer Level 5's first game. A developer who later went on to make titles like Professor Layton, Ni no Kuni, and Yokai Watch. Instead of starting with the protagonist, Dark Cloud starts with the villain flag, releasing the Dark Genie from its sealed urn. The key to unsealing the urn? Why, through the power of dance, of course. I'm curious what the recruitment process was for finding an army of skilled, and very evil, and very, very pale dancers to release a 400-year-old force of evil from its prison was like. Dark Genie attacks the protagonist's village during their town festival, and you see your village destroyed. You wake up greeted by the Fairy King, and are gifted the Atla Malia because of your strong will and your kind heart. You get to be the hero because, well, you're the only one left. The Fairy King tells you your village is destroyed, but not gone. He used his magic to seal the people and buildings in the spheres called Atla, that you must find and collect in order to restore the world. It's up to you to explore the Divine Beast Cave to get help from the Guardian Dran, as well as collect Atla scattered within the cave. Dark Cloud knows exactly what it is from the start. As soon as you take control, it's dungeon crawling time, then followed by a little city building, then more dungeon crawling. If dungeon crawling isn't your thing, well, that's too bad. You'll be spending more time in the dark caves than outside enjoying the sun with the other villagers. Just like me in real life. In dungeons, you go from floor to floor through randomly generated labyrinths, looking for the gate key on each floor. The gate key is held by a random enemy you need to defeat in order to collect. Since enemies hold the way forward, and since Atla to rebuild towns are scattered on each floor, and since helpful items like weapons, maps, and magical crystals are found in chests, you have plenty of incentives to explore the majority of each floor before moving on to the next. Finding maps reveals the rest of the floor, and magical crystals reveal the location of Atla, enemies, and chests. This makes that second half of exploring a floor a breeze. It's simple but smart level design. Without all of these extra smaller goals, you'd just be running straight for the stairs every time. And thank goodness for Dran's Feather, an item that lets you run, because without it, you'd be walking straight for the stairs. Back floors are introduced, which are these bonus areas with harder enemies and better rewards. These areas need keys found in dungeons that almost never drop. I was kinda hoping since floors are randomly generated, entering back floors would just replace the next standard floor with the harder version. This would give you a choice of taking on a harder variant of an existing floor, while still progressing you further through the dungeon. Instead, back floors are an additional part of the same floor. This slows things down a little too much. Now you need to complete the first area as well as the harder back area, just to make the same amount of progress. Some standard floors double as limited zones, having some kind of restrictive effect on the player, like only being able to use one character, increase thirst, or lower weapon leveling instead of raising it. Not a fan of any of these, as they're annoying and limiting, rather than doing anything to expand on the basic gameplay. Despite the visual variety of future dungeons, there's no gameplay differences to separate these spaces other than the enemies in them. Eventually you'll come to a floor that requires some item found in the village you're rebuilding in order to proceed. That's your cue to pause on the spelunking and start putting your hometown back together. So, by dungeon crawling you find more parts of town. You put those parts back together to get key items, as well as more resources from the townsfolk rescued. Then you use those key items in order to continue deeper into the dungeon. It's a nice handshake from these very different gameplay styles. There's a variety of Atla. Some have buildings and other parts that are used to fully assemble a building. Atla can even have villagers inside, which is a terrifying thought. It's your job to place buildings where you see fit, but in order to complete them, you need to speak with the villagers you've rescued and ask them what they need for their homes. The process is simple. I really like the excuse to chat with villagers to reveal the mystery items needed for each building. Once a building is complete, it'll trigger an event. These events bring you closer with the townsfolk, while also bringing you closer to the depths of the dungeon. Townsfolk have additional preferences that when met, bring your town score to 100%. I'm kinda iffy on this part, because it limits your creative muscles having a right answer to fix up the town. But it ends up not being a big deal, and they can even go ignored. It's easy to navigate menus to pick and place objects. You can switch perspectives at any time to start building. You place and rotate your collected Atla parts on a grid. You start in an empty lot with nothing to your name besides what help the mayor can offer. Things start off really slow, until you can get more weapons, party members, and most importantly, open up the shop. Things felt too slow, only being able to clear one floor at a time before you had to leave to pay the mayor another visit. But once the shop opened, the reward was immediate. No longer are you getting free handouts from the mayor. Now you're paying for goods like an adult with a full-time job. But now you're able to properly stock up on items and spend more time in the Divine Beast Cave. In the cave, you meet the mysterious Seda, who you might remember snooping around in the opening cutscene. Seda seems to be familiar with the Atmalia. Believing he needs it more than you, he tries to take it. One quick time event later, he sees the good in our hero protecting a stray cat from one of his attacks and goes on his way. Not before giving the player a changing potion. You ever need another party member in an RPG, but don't have any childhood friends around? Well, have I got the solution for you. Just use this one-of-a-kind furry potion on your nearest stray cat, and boom, you've got yourself a bona fide party member to help you save the world from darkness incarnate. The end of the Divine Beast Cave requires the Horn Key to enter Dron's lair. By this point, you should have all the parts required to finish Norune Village, so it becomes a matter of completing Dron's windmill and claiming the key as your prize. Defeating Dron knocks some sense back into him. Dron tells you to seek out the Moon People near Matataki Village, who had sealed away the Dark Genie in the past. So off you go, traveling to different regions of the map, rebuilding towns, recruiting new allies, and exploring the neighboring dungeons. The town building is at its best in Matataki Village. Most of the Atla you find contains rivers. You need to use those river tiles to connect it from one end of the village to the other. By doing so, you're bringing water to the wilting tree fairy treant. With Norune Village, you are building a monument with a key inside. Matataki Village presents a unique challenge that takes your usual activities of collecting and placing Atla pieces and gives it extra environmental context of why you need to be doing this, to bring water to a tree. Each town has their own distinct visual and cultural feel. That variety extends to the dungeons. What starts as some dark caves and dark forests, then branches out into unique locations, like an underwater shipwreck, to the Sun and Moon Temple in the desert. They've found ways to pack a lot of unique, colorful locations that make you feel like you've traveled all over the world by the end of the adventure. Each environment looks great, but even after you've built up each town, the far render distance for NPCs still makes these places look like ghost towns. You spend most of your time looking at floating blue arrows that represent villagers, then looking at the villagers themselves. They would have probably been better off just giving arms and legs to the blue arrows and calling them villagers. It's weird considering this isn't a problem with enemies in dungeons. They also got a bit too excited with their day-night cycle. Day-night cycles are cool and all, but it's not impressive enough for me to enjoy being stopped by a cutscene every 1 minute and 30 seconds to remind me what time of day it is. The only mechanical impact the time of day has is forcing me to wait and come back later to trigger some events. Like, sorry I caught you sleeping, bro. I'm sure that bar of soap you planned on gifting me can wait till later. Besides that, I just wish there was more to do in towns to better balance gameplay and provide more downtime between trips to the dungeon. Each new town tells its own story, adding more characters, allies, and locations to the world. In order to find any answers, you need to rebuild and solve each town's problems along the way. And if you need any plot explained, the Fairy King will instant transmission himself behind you to explain things. Whatever you're looking for, it's typically found in areas occupied by dangerous creatures. Those creatures are the things standing in your way from saving the world. Combat in Dark Cloud is very simple. Finding the right timing and spacing to attack each enemy is just about all you need. Some encounters include legally distinct quicktime events called duels. I'm sure it's saved the designers a lot of work, and I mean they look nice. But that big bad dangerous snake that killed the best hunter in the village? Well, that's it. he's now avenged. Turning important moments into glorified quicktime events kinda takes the intensity out of a situation like that. The RPG elements are what really gives this game its identity. The difficulty comes from how well you can prepare and manage all of the systems. Like I said before, the start of the game is really slow. You need to manage your health, thirst, and weapon durability that all start at nothing. At first, my man dries out like a sponge. Thankfully, some of the dungeon floors come with their own fountain of youth. One step in cures thirst, depression, heals your wounds, and leaves your skin feeling radiant and soft. I just want to know who thought it was okay to require you to switch to each character for everyone in your party to recover. The time it takes to switch through every character when you need a quick pick-me-up makes the process not so quick. Of course you're worried about your health, but in Dark Cloud, you need to worry about the health of your weapon. The constant beeping you hear won't be coming from you, but your weapon from its deathbed. Weapons have a durability meter and will break, doing the Breath of the Wild thing years before Breath of the Wild. Weapons breaking doesn't really add much but frustration. There's nothing worse than losing your best weapon because you instinctively wanted to finish an attack combo or fight in an encounter you didn't have the durability to finish. There were so many times I had to pause the game in the middle of combat, navigate menus, and repair my weapon before continuing a fight. The game expects you to add attachments to your weapons that boost its stats that become permanent once you've upgraded your weapon. Once a weapon is upgraded 5 times through combat, they can be broken down into synth spheres that can transfer the stats of the original weapon into the new weapon. The suggestion there is to constantly switch weapons in order to break them down and combine their stats with your best weapon. I ended up finding one weapon for each character that's attack stat was much higher than the rest. I didn't want to switch to a less powerful weapon when I was getting by just fine with what I already had. At level 5, you can build up weapons into a new form, only if their respective stats are high enough for that new form. In my entire playthrough, I wasn't able to build up a weapon once. There are so many different stats in Dark Cloud: attack, endurance, speed, magic, fire, ice, thunder, wind, holy, as well as 10 different enemy category types. Making sure all 19 stats were high enough for a specific weapon turned out to be an impossible and unnecessary task. It's too complicated to engage with when the game is easy enough. With every bar you need to manage that keeps you from exploring, you need some way of extending that time. Upgrading and finding new weapons increases your total durability. Gourds can increase your max thirst meter, additional pockets for inventory, and having the money to stock up on repair and replenishing items will let you get more out of every trip to the dungeons. The most important addition to your resources are your allies. The more characters and weapons you get, the longer you can stay in each dungeon, but the harder the challenge of managing their conditions becomes. Each character has some use, but some are clearly better than others. Not all characters had an immediate identity in combat, but some were clearly better than others at handling certain enemies. The player character is good all around. Zhao and Ruby have range, making hitting flying foes easier. Goro has long invulnerability frames during his charge attack, and Ungaga can stun locked enemies with his whirlwind. Each new character can open up new paths. Zhao can jump over large gaps, and Goro's hammer can open doors. But not everyone does their job efficiently. Ungaga takes his good old time removing shadows from doorways, and Ruby needs to examine the color of a crystal, equip the correct element, enter first person mode, then attack the crystal to open a new pathway. This went without mentioning that you need to swap to the correct character before you can even begin, and that the main protagonist is the only one who can open Atla found in the dungeons. This process got old quick. Having a cutscene of the correct character doing an action, no matter who you're playing as, would have sped these repeated actions up and kept the game's flow moving. Not even the menus are safe from slowing the game down. Using items isn't as simple as selecting use, move, or toss. Instead, you need to grab an item and drag it over to the correct spot on your character sheet to use. There's a quick inventory with 3 spots, but it's almost exclusively going to be Dron's Feather to run, auto repair so you don't accidentally lose your best weapon, and auto revive in case you take a fatal blow. Even the convenience the character wheel brings is limited to how slow it takes to rotate in and swap through each character. This resulted in a lot of pausing from the action, pausing to heal, pausing to recover thirst, pausing to repair and switch weapons, pausing to switch characters. These problems wouldn't be solved with a larger inventory alone. The 4 buttons on the D-pad could be repurposed. up for a one-button use consumable list, down for weapon repairs, and left and right to instantly swap between characters. Having auto repair and auto revive prompt automatically when in your inventory, like it does for stand-in powder, would free up the quick inventory, as well as just including a run button, removing the need for Drawn's Feather. Having no game over works really well for a game like this. You have stand-in powder that can switch you to another party member if your current one faints. Resurrection powder revives if you faint. These only work if you stock up and bring them to begin with. It reinforces the importance of, and provides a consequence for poor management. You have multiple party members' lives at your side, but only if you brought the right items with you into the dungeons. If you die for real, you drop half of your money, but keep whatever else you found. Losing half of your total money is an impactful loss that doesn't ruin a playthrough, but it sets you back from being able to better prepare in the future. After your first run-in with Seda, him and the mystery surrounding him just goes poof until the end of the game. It's not until you arrive at the final dungeon that the larger mysteries are revealed. Dark Cloud is good at telling stories. You get stories limited to the villages you explore, but also this grand drama at the end that wraps up all of the important plot points, explaining who Seda is and the Dark Genie's origins. You end up with this really interesting story about sacrifices made in war, and how to rebuild, just like rebuilding after the Dark Genie's destruction. It's actually genius how insignificant Flag is as a villain. He's a pawn to a much greater story, and the game's runtime illustrates that perfectly. You spend all this time after the intro without Flag's presence, with the assumption he's going to be a major villain, just for an abrupt reveal that he didn't have as much control over his plan as you initially thought. I enjoyed Dark Cloud's simple gameplay, but I'd be excited to see what a game like this would be like with more in-depth everything. More in-depth combat, dungeons, town building. Give it more activities and stories, and it could really shine. City building and dungeon crawling were not created equally, not giving you much to do in towns outside of what's required for progression. But with the interesting stories and surprising finale, Dark Cloud definitely left an impression. Lucky for me, just 2 years later, a game called Dark Chronicle, also known as Dark Cloud 2 in the West, released with a variety of improvements over the first. So I'm looking forward to giving that a try.